Hey everyone, it's Mr. Hayden here. It's Monday, March 23rd, and today I wanted to do a little work in Grid World with the Critter class. And I've posted, for those of you who don't have NetBeans and don't have access to your G Drive, I've posted critter.txt and a file named BugEater.txt. And for the assignment, you can make changes to BugEater.txt. If you do have GridWorld running or NetBeans running on your home computer and you have access to your G Drive, or you want to download the GridWorld project you were working on in your shared drive or G drive, that might make it a little more interesting. But you don't necessarily need to have that running to do the assignment. Okay, so if you look at the Critter class, and I'm going to open it in NetBeans just because it'll be easier for me. You can open it in any text file. You'll see that the act method has calls several methods. It calls get actors, then it calls process actors, get move locations, select move locations, and make move. So instead, if you make a subclass of critter, instead of overriding the act method, what you're going to do is override get actors, process actors, get move locations, select move location, and then make move. All right, so what does the get actors do? Well, when a critter acts, it gets a list of actors, and this list of actors could be anything. It could be all actors in the grid. It could be the adjacent actors in the squares that are right beside it, which is the default behavior of a critter. Or it could be, actors in specific random locations on the grid, or, in diagonals or vertical lines on the grid. Somehow it needs to get a list of actors that it's going to process. So you'll see that get actors returns an array list of actors. And one other thing to note is the way that you get the grid that this critter lives in is you call the getGrid method, which is right here. And if you don't override get actors, it gets all of the actors in the adjacent locations of the critter, meaning the 8 cells that are right around the critter itself. Then process actors takes that array list that get actors returned, and then it calls, it does something to each actor in the list of actors that it calls. So you'll see in the act method, first of all, it makes an array list called actors, calls the getActors method. Then for process actors, it uses that array list that it got as the argument for the method call for process actors. So process actors is a for each loop that looks at each actor in the array list of actors. Those, in other words, in the case of critter, the superclass, the ones of the subclass you'll be writing, it's the actors that are in adjacent locations. And basically you do something. This is how you check to see what kind of actor you have. So you'll have like a method probably that'll be like, if instance of rock, do this, else if instance of bug, do this, and the things that it could do is change the colors of the actors, or change their directions, or just flat out remove them from the world, or maybe it could do something to itself based on what kind of actors are around it. And in the case of Chameleon Critter, that's what it does. I believe it changes to the color of one of the actors around it. So then after it processes the actors, it has to figure out where to move. And so in the case, the base case or the superclass case for critter, it just selects one of the random empty locations that are around it. So basically that returns an array list of locations. All right, so you need to, typically these locations will be in, either just the empty the locations that are around it, or maybe the locations that are in a certain pattern on the grid, or maybe like where if it processed some actor in the list of actors and process actors, maybe it's going to be a location where that actor was. Anyhow, it needs to return an array list of locations, get moved locations. Then select move locations from that array list of locations. It's going to go through and somehow choose one of them. All right, now in the case of critter, it just picks randomly one of the empty locations it returns. So basically, select move location returns an individual location that from the array list of locations. So you might have a for each loop that goes through this array list of locations, looks for a specific actor, or checks to see if any ones in the list are empty. It just depends on how the critter is supposed to behave. And then lastly, it makes the move. So in the case of critter, if there were no random empty locations, it would have returned a null array list, and in that case it removes itself from the grid. Otherwise, it moves itself to that location that select move location chose. So your assignment is going to be to see if you can do this for BugEater. Oh, and I don't remember, did I tell you? The critter section in the PDF file, the student manual for Good World, which you already have been looking at, and I'm posting again in Classroom. The critter sections is part 4. It starts on page 29. All right, so it will go into detail over what I just went over. Okay, so what I want you to do for Wednesday is to see if you can write the code for a class that I'm going to called BugEater. So BugEater is in a text file. So basically the way BugEater is supposed to behave is when it gets the list of actors to process, in other words, for the get actors method, it's going to get all of the bugs that are in any adjacent location to itself. So get actors is going to go through all the empty locations, or all the locations, all right, and return any array list, return an array list of all of the bugs, an array list of actors, and each element of the array list is going to return is going to be an actor, or a bug, I'm sorry, that was in one of the adjacent locations. So even though it's returning an array list of actors, since bug is a subclass of actor, that array list of actors may contain bug objects. So you only want to return any bugs that are in any adjacent location for the get actors method when you override it in BugEater. Then process actors is going to choose one of the bugs, if there were any, in the array list that get actors returned. And what it's going to do is remove that bug, that random bug, from the world, and then it's going to record where that bug was, because it will move to for get move locations. If it removed a bug from the world, it's going to automatically move to the location where that bug was. All right, so that means if in process actors, if you remove a bug from the world, somehow you're going to have to store the location of where that bug was so that get move locations can return that location. All right, so since these are in different methods, what you might want to do is, in fact, I may set it up for you, is create an instance variable called location to move. So in BugEater, I'm going to make an instance variable for BugEater so I'm going to say private location location of bug that I ate. All right, and then so by default you don't really need to make a constructor because it will be null by default, but what you should do is when you're overriding process actors, okay, which is right here, if it finds a bug, if there are more than one a bug, at least one, and if there are more than one, then it should pick one of them at random. So it'll randomly generate an index in that array list of actors. And then if it removes a bug from the world, then what it should do is assign to that location of bug I ate location, it should assign to that variable, a new location with the location of the bug that it just ate. So that in get move locations, when you override that, all right, if it ate a bug, it's going to automatically just return an array list of one element, and that element is going to be the location of whatever bug I ate location is. If bug I ate location equals null, then, which it will be if the first time it creates, or the first time the bug's act method is executed, then it's just going to select a random empty location, or basically call the get move locations of the bug class and find that random empty location. And then finally, select move location. Well, if it ate a bug, it's going that lokes is going to be an array list of one element, and it's just going to automatically pick that element. If there wasn't a bug, it's going to basically, when select move location is called, the lokes will just contain a selection of random empty locations, and it can choose one. So that means you don't really need to override select move locations. Just get move locations. It'll either return the location of an array list of one element, the location of the bug it just ate, or a random empty location around it if there was no bug. And then finally, make move, you're going to override it, but instead of removing self from grid, if the location is null, you're going to have it turn. And the only way the location could be null would be if there was an element, there was an actor object on every single side of it, and none of them were bugs, which in our case would mean they were either critters or they were rocks or flowers. So in that case, I want the BugEater object to turn 45 degrees to the right instead of removing itself from the grid. So this may be a lot to take in, but since we did work on Grid World for a while, and I'm sorry, it looks like I've been slouching considerably in my video. Since we did work on Grid World for a while, I'd like you to at least try making a critter. So for Wednesday, you may not get everything right, but give it a shot as your assignment in class, and then you can finish it for Wednesday. So during our class period, which is 11 to 11:50, I will be having a Google Hangout. If you have any questions, you can connect to it, and I'm going to schedule that, and I'm going to put it in, put a link to that in Classroom. No, I'm going to schedule it in Calendar and put a link to the Hangout in Classroom. So hopefully today we don't have any childcare because we're trying to play it safe and basically quarantine my wife and myself here at home, even though we don't know of any specific reason that we need to, other than that there's a teacher at the high school, as you may have seen, that has COVID-19. We don't know who it is, just to be safe. Since we had a healthcare worker in our home last week, just to be safe for social distancing purposes, it's just going to be my wife and our two crazy 4-year-olds, meaning I may have interruptions during the Google Hangout. You'll just have to bear with me, and if I don't happen to be there when you try to connect, try connecting 10 minutes later, and I will try to be there to answer any questions you have and help you with this assignment. All right, and I hope you did the multiple choice questions. Right now, they haven't told us what, for those of you taking the AP test, they haven't told us what topics will not be on the test. I strongly suspect that sorting and searching, unfortunately, even though we've just done work with it, will not be on the test. Usually that's one of the last topics that most teachers go over maybe in March and April, and I think the note from the College Board said they're going to eliminate some of the later topics in the course. So at any rate, that's today's screencast. Watch it, connect with me on Google Hangouts, take the little warm-up multiple choice practice quiz. It has to do with inheritance, dynamic binding, and static binding. So it's a good one. It's on Google Forms. It does provide feedback if you get the right or wrong answer. So do your best with it, and I hope all is well in your household. You're happy, healthy, and safe, and practice good social distancing. And we'll continue on with this experiment of homeschooling. All right, I would like to see some of your happy faces. I do really miss seeing you guys. I don't think I've seen Dustin yet on the Google Hangout, and I don't think I've seen Nate, or maybe Nate, I didn't see your camera or your video. I don't know if I've seen Jason yet either, or Cameron. I think maybe Cameron was the only one who wasn't in the Hangout the other day. But if you could turn your Hangout or your video on just for a second so I can say hello, I think it would help me be less lonely and help me not to think I'm going stir crazy here in my house. So, all right. We will hopefully see some of you, or at least talk to some of you later after you read this. So check Google Classroom for the Hangout link. Bye.